We do know that customers are asking for AEO and GEO now. How do you navigate that conversation?
I started with very small business clients, very small SEO budgets. And when you're doing that, you can't really compete with all the commercial keywords. So we would really go after longer tail strategies, which typically came in the form of questions. So we were writing question-based content 10 years ago. If you already have a strong foundation and you were doing FAQs and schemas and all that fun stuff, you already are ahead of the game when it comes to this AEO, GEO, AI search.
I have been very resistant to selling anything labeled GEO or AEO because I just feel like it's good SEO at the end of the day. Like, there are some different strategic focuses you can take around it, but when you look at the execution, I'm not going to sell you anything I wouldn't sell you with a normal SEO package. So I've always believed SEO content should be about a lot more than just fulfilling a keyword, but fulfilling an actual audience need. That is how you're successful in AEO.
Welcome to another episode of SEO On Air. I have two great guests with us today. I'm going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their backgrounds and the companies that they're with, before we dive into a few questions that are just about understanding AEO, the customer's perspective on AEO, and what they're needing to understand about traffic today and visibility today, as there is a feeling that things have changed over the past couple of years. So we're gonna get an understanding of the two guests and what they feel about those different topics. Starting with Kaylee. Kaylee, if you could give us an introduction to who you are and what your agency does, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'm Kaylee Peterson. I am the Director of Client Services at Composely. We are a historically content writing based agency, but are expanding into becoming a full service marketing agency. We have SEO services, content strategy, paid, kind of a you name it, we do it situation in the digital marketing world right now. And I oversee the actual execution and delivery of all of those services. So I'm pretty in the weeds on execution and strategy, and everything is changing and how we adapt that to all of our clients. And we're not niched down into any industry. So I'm lucky that I get to see sites kind of across the gamut and work in every niche of SEO at once. So that helps me keep on the ball of all the changes happening at once. In my background, I've been in SEO for almost 10 years now. I started in agency and local SEO. I've kind of been in and out of in-house agency. I worked abroad for a couple years in the UK market. And now I'm based in Charleston, working remotely with Composely for US and Mexico and Canadian clients. So I've gotten a chance to see SEO in a lot of different forms and been on the in-house stakeholder and leadership side of SEO, and now on the agency side, getting to deliver across a lot of different sites, which is exciting.
I'm going to be excited to hear your perspective from like the customer standpoint, because we often get a contrast in like national marketing level companies and local marketing companies, and how their interactions are just so different. I'm going to be curious how you manage both. Thank you for being here, Kaylee. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike Haley, owner and operator of M&M Multimedia. We started primarily as a video production agency back in 2009 while I was still doing a full-time gig for a software developer called Field Edge that sold software to home services companies like air conditioning, plumbing. So that's kind of where I met my mentor, who kind of took me under his wing, and he was doing a great job using SEO to drive leads to our sales departments and things like that. And then he was nice enough to take me under his wing and kind of teach me everything he knew. And then when he left, I got to take over that role at the software company, and then started to slowly implement that into M&M Multimedia as we became more than just a video production company. Like Kaylee, we do focus a lot. Well, I don't know exactly what she said there, but like we do focus a lot on non-niche, so to speak, because after you sell software and market software to plumbing and air conditioning companies for 15 years, the last thing you want to do is try to niche yourself again. I just get bored really quickly, really easily. And I like to say I'm a glutton for frustration, because I love SEO and GEO, especially nowadays in the last year, can constantly provide challenges, opportunities to learn, opportunities to experiment, test, fail forward in some cases, but ultimately get to a point where you know what works and what doesn't, and you can kind of clear out all the clutter and the noise of every other SEO resource that tells you things that this isn't the way to do it. It varies. That's what I've learned. It really does.
It's one of the fun things about our industry is no one's ever wrong in SEO. Their strategies are their own, and if they're working, they're working, and you can't really fault them for getting progress, like for making progress and getting results.
Exactly.
On the other hand, there's some companies that customers are very happy to not be a part of anymore because they felt like they weren't getting results. Which I am going to jump into our first question with that thought, because the first question I have is, you guys both talk to real customers. You're interacting with these people. You understand their frustrations. Sometimes the education piece is the hardest part about working with a customer because they don't really understand what you do, but they know they need it or they think they need it. What are some of the most common misconceptions that your customers have about the industry that just isn't explained well? What are they misunderstanding about SEO today?
Well, I think SEO as a practice is not clear to anyone outside of SEO what it is. I mean, to this day, my mom still tells people I work for Google. So I just don't think people quite grasp what the day to day looks like. But what I find in conversations with clients, a lot of the misconception is around, SEO is a one time fix, that it is something you can just do once and leave it and it's fine. And we know that it's ongoing and it's constantly changing. So we have a lot of discussions about, even if I got your site in perfect conditions, 6 months from now, something could change completely out of our control. I'm going to have to go back in. And that's why you want constant eyes on it. And that's been the conversation for a long time, of trying to translate what feels very technical and jargony into, I'm just making sure Google can read your site. I'm making sure it's simple. I'm making sure anyone who gets here understands who you are, what you do, and why it matters, and why you're a good fit for them. And I'm trying to meet them where they're at. Whatever they're searching, whatever questions they're asking, I just want to be where they're at. And that's how we typically explain it. But I think AI has added a new layer of complexity to that. It's just so loud right now. I think all of our clients are kind of panicking. They're getting the sense that they're missing something, or they're not ahead of the ball, or they're going to get left behind. But now that we're almost a year into AI, when we pull data, we just did our 2025 look back. Our clients that are performing the best in LLM referral traffic, it's still maybe 3% of their overall traffic in the last year. So it's interesting that it is such a big conversation and such a big focus, but the data doesn't really support that it is having the impact everyone assumed it would. Even when we look at direct traffic and organic traffic and branded mentions and all the different ways it can influence, organic traffic is still growing and generating leads, and LLMs are not having the same impact or growing at the rate everything was predicted to. So it's actually kind of nice to have the conversations now, a year in, and be able to base them in data and give people a little bit of a breath of relief of, we can absolutely talk about it and we can get into it, but I promise you, your business is not going to crash and burn if we don't pivot to pure AI services today. So it is a little bit of a lot of data pulling and a lot of putting technical terms into layman's terms and being able to translate that to, if you do this, it will do this for you and you will get this out of it. And then people are able to connect the dots a lot better on SEO.
And that's a good segue to the analogies I typically use to educate the client. And like Kaylee said, when this, as an SEO company, right, and this AI stuff started coming out, and I started following things, and it's like, hey, people aren't clicking through the sites as much because Google's giving you the previews and all that stuff. You're going to see that. Of course, I have to stay ahead of that and then explain to that when Google Search Console is showing that, when I'm comparing last month or last 3 months to the other, that we're not losing clicks, but it's flatlining a little bit. I have to educate the client on that. But I think the biggest misconception kind of aligns with what Kaylee said, is the timeline. There's so many clients that come to us, and these are smart people. These are people, doctors, lawyers, insurance people, et cetera, wealth management people that think that, we need leads, and I have to educate them right off the bat. Like, when do you need these leads? Because if you're saying you want SEO, and I hope you have the intestinal fortitude to get through how long it's going to take for me to start seeing leads through SEO. and so I always use the analogy with the clients. I said, like, there's kind of like two routes you can go right now. You can go and you could be the person. It's a good time of the year. It's January. We're all making New Year's resolutions. We're going to go work out. I'm going to go lose weight. I'm going to look better. I say that every year. And I could do so. SEO is like, hey, we're going to make a plan. We're going to have a strategy, and we're going to understand that in 6 months from now, I'm going to start to see results for this, right? And kind of going back to what Kaylee says, if I stop at 6 months because all of a sudden I'm in the shape I want to be and I'm looking there, and I just stop doing those things because the analogy of being on page one in SEO or whatever it may be, you might be good for another month. But in month 2, month 3, month 4, it's going to start, your performance is going to be a little bit different. You're going to start to have some setbacks. So I tell them, like, maybe what you really want, if you want leads, is what, the liposuction, right? The quick cosmetic surgery, where we call that Google Ads. I can turn that on. I can get it going. We can get you leads faster, or paid ads, or different advertising strategy. But I think educating clients, and I have a really good sales rep that does this too, of having the patience and understanding that this is going to take time, and just kind of flipping over the AI stuff, kind of seeing the same thing that Kaylee said, where not a ton of traffic is producing, but at the same time, I do feel that there are what I call vanity clients to some degree, where it's almost like they just want to know that they're being mentioned in ChatGPT. They want to see that on the report. They want to know that their number on page one and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, don't you want to know if, like, that's converting to some sort of revenue or something like that? And half of my clients are just happy that they're on page one, and I'm like trying to show them how to tie that revenue to it, which I know we'll get to later. So
I think that's really funny. You talk about them not wanting to see it, because I'm in my head, I'm thinking, man, if I'm running a business and I've been burned by an SEO before, which we know has happened, right? Like, many of your customers left someone who they thought was just robbing them. And you're telling me it's going to take some time. And I'm like, yeah, but how do I know it's really working? Which has been a big problem with SEO since its beginning, right? Like, it's really hard to track that revenue. I want to hear how you guys manage that gap. I know you say some of your customers might not care. They just know they need to be spending on SEO, so they spend. But as it gets where traffic maybe is declining, and it may not be as drastic as we expected it to be, but as traffic is declining, excuse me, how are you helping your customer understand where the ROI on their SEO and GEO investments are coming from? This seems to be a really hot topic with agencies. I'm curious to hear how you guys are approaching that emotional conversation, because it's why they're buying from you in the first place with your customers, to try to prove to them that this is well worth it.
I think on our end, traffic, so we're kind of split in our SEO services, that we have an SEO content side of things that's really blog focused and still is heavily producing blogs at scale, and they're working. Like, we're seeing 90% year over year traffic growth to blogs still. So it's, the data just contradicts all of the LinkedIn fear mongering we're seeing all the time. But then we have to talk through, is that good traffic? Does that traffic actually do something when it gets onto the site? We talk to clients a lot about the difference between quality and quantity. And it would be, I could go get you 10,000 sessions a month. But if all of those people get to your site and leave immediately, and they never come back, and they never scroll, and they never click, and they never sign up for an email or a nurture campaign or convert, it was a waste of everyone's time, just so you could say, look at all the traffic I've got. So I think we're having the conversations with clients now in onboarding around, like, is your GA4 tracking set up? Do you know what a conversion actually means to you? How would we define a conversion for you, so that we can kind of tie the knot for them on, well, this is what it actually happens when people get to your site. And I think it's kind of forcing SEO to become more than SEO, which, back in the day was rankings and traffic. And if you got people to the site, that was my business and nothing else. And I think now SEO is more about the site as a whole. Like, you're becoming more of a web manager holistically than just a search manager, in that I do think it's your job as an SEO to be able to tell somebody got to my content and left immediately. So my content's not great, or I'm not fulfilling the search request, or put a heat map on the site and understand when people are frustrated with your site and not getting the experience right. I think that impacts your SEO. So it is, thinking about SEO more holistically. And I think with clients, having the conversation for them of what does it actually mean to you to be successful in SEO, and how do we help you get there, and how do we help you represent what that success looks like. We've been doing a lot of stakeholder reporting for our points of contacts in the last year. Of they come to us and say, hey, my CEO just wants an SEO report and I don't know where to start. And we're helping them build out those like quarterly decks, quarterly reviews of here's how to actually track that funnel all the way down. And a lot of that comes from my experience of being in the leadership suite and having to answer questions like, why am I paying you to work here? And what is the point of your salary? And having to be able to defend that constantly as the in-house SEO. But those are the questions you're going to get asked in that leadership room. And I think, to Mike's point about it being such a long-term investment, that is the hardest part of the conversation is you're going to spend money for 3 to 6 months and maybe not see return. But if you go into it knowing it's a long-term investment, then you'll know at that like 6, 9, 12, 18-month point, you're going to see the return and it's going to let you spend less elsewhere. Where our goal is, if you're a year into SEO, you shouldn't have to spend as much on paid because you're able to get that conversion elsewhere and so much cheaper than on a paid conversion. But you have to be willing to make the commitment and the investment. So that's a long-winded say, like, it depends on the client and what they care about and how they get there. But we do try to walk them from it matters what happens when people are on your site as a metric more so than just getting them there anymore.
Yeah, kind of going back to that whole side of the Google Ads side, we kind of preach the same thing. Like if you're going to start with Google Ads, ultimately SEO should start to lap that at some point and be able to reallocate that budget from Google Ads and so forth. But as far as like the tracking, what I had to do, especially when GA4 came out, because it was just we were growing at the time, we were kind of bursting at the seams. I had to hire somebody that just really could go in and set up all the different events. If you remember when GA4 came out, the reporting was just lacking considerably, and it was a lot of manual setup, things that we were used to be able to quickly be able to explain to people through simple conversion setups and through the older version. And now we have to go set up these events and make sure the event's marked as a key event and so forth. So there was just a learning curve there. But once we were able to kind of grasp that, we were able to kind of start building out event dashboards and things like that that would show like the medium where that first user touch came in, and almost treating it like almost like what I learned way back in the day with paid ads, where you have to have these attribution models of like, was this the first touch, the second touch, and so forth. So we're trying to get that dialed in a little better for us. If anything, that's probably where I'm spending a lot of my time now, is just trying to get better reporting to show a specific ROI or ROI value, because, like you said, the days of just saying, hey, I can give you, some clients are satisfied with that. Like, hey, most of your traffic is coming for organic. And like I said, I have clients that are perfectly fine with, okay, most are fine, but is that converting anything? And I'll give you in the conversation I had yesterday. It was one of those, and I'm, full transparency. The guy was like, well, what am I doing? I had to really educate it. It was a custom blinds window treatment manufacturer, local SEO client. So it was kind of twofold, where he's trying to get traffic to the actual retail showroom. So we got to concentrate on the local Google business listing and so forth. But there was just a misconception there too, because I'm showing his SEO organic report and it's showing all these visits and conversions and things like that. He's like, well, why does mine say it's about a third of those? I'm like, you're looking at your Google business profile insights and the calls and the metrics coming from that, which is one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the full picture here. And so in turn, we were able to kind of flip the switch a little bit. And then we start having a deeper conversation. And he goes, yeah, well, let me just tell you. And he starts going, and I was proud of him. I will say this, because this is one way that, not to flip it on the customer, but there has to be some skin in the game on their end too, that if they can't really define what a conversion is, what's a valuable thing for them, and they're not allowing us to install things like more advanced call tracking and so forth, then your sale, the person that's answering that phone, is going to have have some good salesmanship too. So he goes on, and he starts talking about how he just got 7 leads in the last calls in the last week, 2 weeks of the first 2 weeks of the year, but they're not closing yet. And I'm like, well, I didn't want to say it, but I am decent at sales, but I'm not for hire for window treatments. But I feel like I'm doing my job and I'm getting your leads. Now let's talk about those leads. Now let's talk about your sales process. How do you follow up with those leads? We don't. Have you thought about email marketing and nurturing those leads? We don't. And so there's that side of it too, where at some point, where do we draw like, hey, our goal was to get you the lead. Now, how do I help you, with the salesmanship and close those leads? So, take it to heart. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, do a little more deep dive into some of his suggestions. But ultimately, if I can keep if I get you 10 more leads next week and they don't close.
You guys have both touched on something that I think is interesting. One of them is that I've had agencies on before that talked about they came in as a consultant to replace an employee, I think, that had turned over at a company that was doing SEO for them. And that employee had a compensation package that was based on impressions. So they had done a ton of stuff to get a ton of impressions, and there was like zero conversion because getting impressions and getting a real opportunity are like completely different. I appreciate that both of you really touched on that. And Michael, to your point, one of the other things that I'm seeing from agencies today is that they're actually getting the sales recordings because they're finding that like they're using all the terminology that the customer's given them. And then they listen into the sales recording and all the customers are using completely different terms than they're using in the marketing services. And you're like, wow, we're just not aligned between sales and marketing. And that's been a gap that we've seen in marketing forever, right? Sales and marketing always feel like they're right. And it seems like more agencies are coming in like you've had to there and been a consultant to bridge the gap between marketing and sales and make it one team instead of.
I mean, it helped selling software for a long time because I was the sales guy too that argued with the marketing person for a while. Then I flipped hats and I'm like,
yeah, I've been that guy myself.
Yeah, and I've been the sales guy that, bangs heads with the developers of the software because they're like, this guy, I lost his sale because I don't have this feature. Build that feature.
Oh, you have till next week.
Yeah, exactly. And
so I'm going to go on the customer's perspective again and we do know that customers are asking for AEO and GEO now. They do not understand what SEO is. They don't necessarily understand what AEO and GEO is, but they've seen some really good ads on their Facebook page that said that they need to use them now and that they're going to replace their marketing agency. So they're coming in hot maybe. Hey, I want AEO and GEO, guys. Help me understand how you navigate a conversation with a customer when most agencies would say, no, you want SEO, you're wrong. But the terminology for the customer seems to be evolving where they ask for one thing and mean another. How do you navigate that conversation?
I'll kind of compare this to, when was it, 2010-ish, somewhere in there, where I always used to tell people like, just kind of comparing to the social media burst where everybody was like, social media came out, it's changing the way we market to people. We got to do this. And within that first couple of years, this is when I was still working here, but also working for the software developer, they would pay for me to go to seminars and everybody was social media this, social media that. So it kind of created that same kind of like environment that we're in with this AI stuff where every company now thinks they have to do social media marketing without fully grasping, do you have to do social media marketing? Because there was some smart agencies or Facebook, whoever it was, saying you need to go ahead and start doing this. We want your money. And so I would literally have people come to me that say, okay, I need you to help me with my social media market. I want a Twitter page of this. I'm like, well, who's your audience? What is it? What are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? And things like that. So I feel some kind of like similarities of what I went through at that stage of our agency is kind of comparable to what we're going through now, where it's just the buzzword, it's happening, people are asking for it. I'm actually not getting as many people asking for AEO and GEO still. I'm not. I'm getting what I've done is I've kind of flipped the script a little bit. And about halfway through last year, I just started, I saw the writing on the wall in terms of like, if this is coming and SEO is changing, and as I saw the clicks and the Gemini previews popping up and kind of intercepting the click-throughs, I basically just started building newer add-on packages for our traditional SEO so they could go in and we could kind of future proof it. But we've always done a great job. And I don't know if it was just me being stubborn and I got lucky, but I always loved going after, like, I started with very small business clients, very small SEO budgets. And when you're doing that, can't really compete with all the commercial keywords. So we would really go after longer tail strategies, which typically came in the form of questions. So we were writing question based content 10 years ago, like for these SEO clients, 5 years ago. And then with our video studio, we were trying to figure out how do we leverage the video. I got 2 studios behind me. How do we leverage that into SEO as well? And so we came up with this FAQ video package where we literally go to answer the public research or whatever tool we use to figure out the search volume of what people are asking about a particular topic. And we'd come in the studio and we'd create 10 videos that had the exact syntax of what the search volume were of those questions. And so over those years, we've been pushing out all that stuff on there, through YouTube channels, embedding them into blogs, et cetera. So I guess, to long story short here, or long story long, is you have to still have the traditional SEO principles in order for AEO or GEO to even identify you as a source. I had somebody tell me a while ago, like, and maybe this has changed in the last month or so, but AI is not going to create something that doesn't exist or have something to reference. And when I say AI, I'm talking about generative AI. It has to have something to reference to some degree. So if people are now switching their search patterns to going to ChatGPT or AI mode or whatever, and they're asking questions there, if you already have a strong foundation and you were doing FAQs and schemas and all that fun stuff, you already are ahead of the game when it comes to this AEO, GEO, AI search.
What would you, maybe I'll give Kaylee a chance to answer the same here. How are you approaching this conversation with your customers?
Probably my sales team's nightmare because I have been very resistant to selling anything labeled GEO or AEO because I just feel like it's good SEO at the end of the day. Like, there are some different strategic focuses you can take around it, but when you look at the execution, I'm not going to sell you anything I wouldn't sell you with a normal SEO package. I'm going to sell you good, thoughtful content that matches your user intent, that answers your questions. Talking about the sales team, my number one recommendation for content marketers is to go sit with your sales team. What questions are they getting asked all the time? What concerns, what no's are you getting all the time? Answer that with your content. So I've always believed SEO content should be about a lot more than just fulfilling a keyword, but fulfilling an actual audience need. That is how you're successful in AEO. Even some of the terminology being used, like chunking, it's like kind of just a really well-written paragraph. The fan out queries, the grounding, that's just the LLMs using search techniques to discover new content. I have yet to see anything that's really groundbreaking in executional tactics enough to say, like, you need this completely different package. Now, there are things we can do. We can audit for AI presence and awareness. We can build dashboards that help you track how it's actually performing and how people are getting to your site. But the conversations that I'm having with clients right now are like, I could sell you a very expensive GEO package and I could tell you I'm doing all of these things to your content, but realistically, I'm just going to be doing good SEO for you. I'm going to be doing good technical. I'm going to make sure your site is clean and crawlable. I'm going to be doing good content and making sure that you are unique and you're answering audience questions. And I'm going to make sure that you're discoverable so that they can find you and recommend you. Because I think, to Mike's point, the brands winning in AI search right now are the brands that were always winning. They are the most established brands. They are the name recognizable brands. If you were already a tiny site who didn't have name recognition, you're not going to get name recognition in the LLMs until you establish yourself as a known and talked about brand. So, I mean, there are pieces you can add on. You could add a digital PR package and get more brand mentions out there. You can focus on, some of the more holistic marketing pieces, even outside of SEO. But that is where I probably have been the obstacle at my agency in the last year, is I just haven't seen anything yet that says, let's go be an AI SEO agency when we could just do great SEO and get the same results. And so we're having that conversation a lot with clients. That being said, we definitely have clients that are, I don't care what you say. I'm going to go get AI SEO somewhere. I'm going to go buy it and I don't care. And you can work with them, but I'm going to buy AI SEO from someone somewhere. And I will say, when we work with those like GEO agencies, AI SEO agencies, we struggle from an SEO perspective. A lot of their recommendations are bad for SEO. They're making recommendations that are going to hurt the site, the content itself in the long run. We just had a giant content project where we did all the SEO strategy and the writing. Then we would send it to the GEO agency for a GEO review. And some of the recommendations were things like, take out any mention of a Gen X audience or a millennial audience, like put yourself in the searcher's shoes, but don't actually use the phrasing of like a Gen X would like this. Some of that standard SEO ranking stuff. They wanted to use the exact same header structure across 30 pieces of content and just duplicate themselves. And the articles they were producing were like company A versus company B, and now company B versus company C, and now company A versus company B versus company C. So you're getting the same content made 40 times over for the LLMs, essentially. And all it's going to do realistically is hurt their SEO. But the client was so bought into GEO, you just can't get past that. And you just have to, at a certain point, go, okay, I warned you. Here's my thoughts. Let's get it documented. I said this was a bad idea. And if you're still down, we'll do it. But when it doesn't work, I want to come back to my documentation that I didn't think this was a good idea. That's a rare case. I also agree. We're hearing less and less requests now for GEO and AI search, and a lot more requests for SEO and website rebrands and new content across the site. It feels like the outcome is starting to become a branding exercise almost than a pure tactical GEO SEO exercise. So conversation has changed a lot. It was pretty panic induced, I think, in the beginning of last year. And I think now at the end of the year, everyone's kind of seeing how it's playing out. It's becoming a lot more about like, oh, this is an overall company strategy and not something, it's not a quick fix to just buy an AI package and fix it.
Okay. I had the thought there I've been in sales, and I'm like, man, if someone sells you based on their real recommendations and not just you not telling them what they wanted to hear, which is like, hey, you need a GEO package for this. And you're like, no, because that's not what you need or what you want. You need to trust me on this. I feel like your sales team is better off listening to that advice. Michael, I want to ask you about your GEO packages, because I do think even with you're working like a local customer, they don't have a huge SEO budget, and they don't want to give you the entire SEO budget you need for a full SEO campaign. They're going to give you enough to optimize pages or a page at a time, right? So then they also ask you for GEO. And then there's this balance there, I'm assuming, of like, hey, yeah, we'll get you GEO, but that's just additional SEO tactics packaged in a GEO package, I assume. Tell me a little bit about your GEO packages and how you utilize those for your team.
Well, I'm constantly revamping them, but as I guess as recent as the last quarter of 2025, I basically just had to go through and like try to package stuff to where we have those tiers like anyone else. Like here's our tier, and how do you price it? I mean, that was one of the biggest things I had to figure out early on is how do I even price this stuff and still stay profitable and keep it reviewing it to make sure we're still have the margins that we need. But I basically went through and just started taking each of our tier one, lowest tier, tier two, mid tier, tier three, tier, and then started to wrap some semblance of GEO in it. So, for an example, our lowest tier, we're going to go ahead and put the LMS TXT file, and we're going to start writing more FAQ related content and using the schema and things like that. And that's about as far as we're going to go. You get up to the other tier. I'm going to start to, actually try to add some AI bots and chat bots and things like that of that nature. So I know it doesn't really fly into the whole like GEO side, but it was a way to kind of layer in some of the rhetoric we were hearing and demand of kind of beefing up those packages to be future proof for the future of search and all that stuff. So
yeah, showing some innovation, some proactive thinking, so they trust you along with that as well.
Where I went wrong is I didn't change our pricing for it. I should have probably added a little into that because it does require a little more. But I'm also at the point too to where it being early enough to where if I'm still experimenting with it, you're not paying me to experiment. Once I have a proven path, then I'll.
I appreciate that you went that way because that's where my mind started thinking. With like, if they're concerned about the volatility of like SEO and traffic leaving the site and moving to LLMs, I'm like, how much do you really want to invest in optimizing for LLMs then? Because we saw that change with Reddit, like where it was being cited all the time, and then they tried to shut it down, and then it went. It's been so volatile it changed stock prices because the way they change their algorithms completely changes visibility. What are you optimizing for when they don't necessarily know how they're going to be viewing that right now? You kind of have to lean on the baseline foundation of SEO, which is everything it's pulling from, right? I think that's a really interesting perspective.
Well, I tell people skipping SEO is like asking ChatGPT to mention your brand without having anything published online about your brand. So you got to have something there, you know.
We always just a joke about the phone books, right? Like doing good SEO is like being in the phone book. If you don't do it, going back to early 2025, AI in marketing felt like it did get like fueled with like a bunch of SEO is dead conversation, which has come back with vengeance of no, it's not. And I know that a lot of agencies felt really early on that they needed to adopt every tool, every reporting dashboard, and really make sure that they were on top of this. Then a bunch pulled back and stopped using all those tools because they felt like it was not worth the investment of time to try to fix all the stuff AI created for them. And we see the contrast of those that are doubling down and trying to get really, really good at the tool, whether it does a great job or not. They see it as the future. Now we switch that into like the content production piece. These agencies are using either handwritten content, like the real people driven content, or they're using AI content. There seems to be a happy middle ground for a lot of agencies. What is your perspective on this? Even with the knowledge that like the AI crawling tools that determine whether or not content is written by a human or a bot are not necessarily very accurate themselves. How does your team view this production of content using AI? How are you guys approaching it?
I want to hear what she says first because it sounds like on the SEO spectrum, she leans more towards the writing and the content production and things like that, copywriting, where I say we're on the other end of the spectrum where we're more technical and.
That's a good answer, Michael. I think I appreciate recognizing their content.
But I want to hear. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll tell you everything I tried, and I'll give you all the tools.
All right, Kaylee, no pressure, but we're expecting just pure genius right now, right here.
I'm definitely a content SEO at heart. I've grown more into technical now that I've been in agency side. It's just a necessary evil. I think it is important, but yeah, my heart and soul, all my strategies start in content SEO, which is why I like working at Composely. We've been a content writing agency for so long. So I think it's rare for an SEO to not have to write and edit their own content. And then usually when that's happening, the content is like not great, which is where AI is helpful because anyone can write better with AI. Now it takes human touch, I believe, but at Composely, we already had like a 200 person freelance writer network when I got here. So our SEO was pretty easy to just fit into a human written path. We have human editors. Everything is touched by humans. We have an AI assisted version where we can use AI to draft. It's human editing. I've seen both be really successful. I think as long as a human's involved at some point and you're gut checking, we know that AIs hallucinate. We know that they will make up anything and the models change so often. You could have a perfect process and they're going to change the model and you've got to start from scratch again because of whatever they've decided. I think ChatGPT for me is the worst offender of this, of you'll have an excellent GPT built and then the model changes and it breaks and nothing works anymore. So we've been trying everything. But for me, like I think AI is an excellent tool. I could not do the work I do now at the pace I do it without AI. I just think it has to include human oversight and it cannot be a replacement for human strategy and the actual expertise that you need because someone has to fact check it. It's not going to fact check itself. It'll just tell you it's right till the end of the day. So that's where we find a lot of value is using it as a tool and then bringing in our experts to actually gut check. This is right. This looks right. And we have clients on all ends of the spectrum. Some of our clients are, don't let AI look at my content. Don't let it touch it. I want it written by a human all the way through. Some of the clients are like, I don't really care what you do as long as it's cheap and fast and it's great and I can just get it up as fast as possible. And so we can do both ends. Um, but yeah, it's I'm varied, and even on like the AI tool side, because I think kind of leaning towards some of the prompt tracking and all of the new tools that are coming out, like I'm really on the fence. I've tried it all and I haven't been impressed by any of the prompt tracking tools because you get a lot of data back and no clear insights. There are tools out there that will track prompts on an hourly basis, and every single result, every single hour is different. You get a different lineup of brand recommendations, you get a different order of brand recommendations. And what is anyone meant to do with data that says, I don't know, on any day, on any model, at any hour, for any prompt, you might or might not be mentioned? And that's where I think the prompt tracking tools are probably going to hit a wall at some point, where it's really cool to have new data you've never seen before. But at a certain point, people are going to start asking, what does the data actually mean to us? And I think because of
Feels like a question we were asking about SEO.
yeah. I think because of personalization, I don't know if they ever are able to get meaningful data as the AIs are determined to get more and more personalized as time goes on. So I think everything for me AI wise is like, I'm on board as long as a human is involved and a strategist is reviewing and okaying. And until the tools can find their way around how personalized AI results are for users, I don't know that you get a tool that captures data the way a SEMrush or an Ahrefs could for SEO. And I don't know how you report on AI at like a company prompt level other than taking blind educated guesses, which some people like. So we do that when we need to, but it's really hard to draw conclusions.
But you can't show any like real.
Yeah.
Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I always, I just taught a video marketing class yesterday, and I reminded people the keyword in AI is artificial. And AI also can stand for authenticity interrupter. And so kind of like what Kaylee was saying is it's a tool. It's a great tool. It's one of those things I've been using so often now that I don't remember, like, you're like, how did we do this before type thing almost. But going back to that, like she said, kind of fall right in line with her, where like I have every customer is a little different of what they want to see or what they expect. So like, and I work in some like we have somewhat of a niche in insurance, and I'll have some clients that are that's regulated and they have compliance and things like this. But I have ones like just post whatever. I'm like, well, you have compliance things, so let me at least have somebody review this. I don't have time to review it, but I want to rank for everything. I'm like, all right, well, here we go. And then, I'm a tool junkie. So like, I will try any SEO tool. I will start with the premium model, upgrade when after I realize I don't have to do this. I've tried everything from SEMrush, SE ranking, search atlas, you name it. We probably tried it at some point. And kind of going along those lines, I think all of these tools I just started seeing kind of started to adapt the AI module into it within the last probably at the furthest back, maybe 6 months ago, but more recently, probably in the last 3 or 4 months, they started to add these features. But like, I'll give you an example. One of the tools I use has a whole dashboard about, mentions and link sources and things like that. But they haven't gone as far to even integrate it into their automated reporting tool, because I don't even think they know what to report on that type of stuff too. I think we're in that same stage where, kind of like last year, where we're just kind of, we have a year under a belt, where we are starting to at least get some data through analytics and things like that. I think these tools at some point will need to figure out how to tie some sort of revenue marker to those AI search. Because like you said, I think it's a buzz topic. I think it's something that we have to, as an agency, be aware of and adapt to, but not like freak out and start putting all our eggs in one basket. I personally think we're doing the right thing of combining little AI search and AEO into our traditional SEO and slowly adapting that, reviewing that 6 months from now at the end of the year and just seeing what we need to keep doing to stay relevant, because most of my recurring revenue are SEO clients. And so I have to stay on top of it.
I can appreciate not just blowing their budget on testing every single thing out too, and whether or not you really think it's going to get results. it's not really how your customers want to be treated in the first place.
No, not at all. Like I say, I have one site I test. We rent the studio rental site for local photographers and videographers, and that's where I experiment everything because I have no harm, no foul in that sense. There,
Authenticity interrupter, is that the term that I need to remember?
and that's what I came up with.
One of the things that we had on a recent podcast was someone talked about when you see it, it's not really for you. Whether it's the content, whether it's a video that's been created by AI or even a photo, sometimes you see it and you're just like, nope, that's not for me. Unsubscribe or whatever else you need to do. There's something about that authenticity.
I'll give you a good example. You just remind me of one of my funniest ones. Like we were doing this. We're in Fort Myers, Florida, Southwest Florida. We got hit with Hurricane Ian probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Devastated the whole beach. But one of my buddies ended up going in and buying one of the restaurants and revamping it down there. And he wanted me to do his SEO and all this stuff. And we were writing content of like things to do on the beach. And it was like kind of going back that they were using this like versus thing kind of strategy. And it was like, oh, what to do today? Go jet skiing or fishing. And so full transparency, I use Koa AI to write the articles. This was back when I was testing out batch article writing. And so it came in there. I clicked the little thing. Like, let's see how it generates the image. And next thing you know, I was like, let's just post it directly from there to their WordPress site. Because, again, he's a buddy of mine. I knew I had some forgiveness. And so I post it there, and I go to him, and I was like, well, here's one of the new articles, what to do on Fort Myers Beach, jet ski or fish. And the image it created, I'm not lying, was a guy on a jet ski towing a guy with a ski rope on the back of the jet ski. The guy on the tow rope that was skiing was also holding one hand on the jet ski and a fishing pole in the other one. So it literally took it verbatim. It was like, we're jet skiing and fishing. I said, that didn't answer the question. The article started to tell him, which one should we do? You made the guy do both.
I mean, you could have been trolling something from the back of the jet ski.
Yeah, exactly. You could have like headed out there, just like troll fishing or whatever. And
if you have any last thoughts, Kaylee, we'll let you kind of end this and then we'll wrap up here. But the last few questions are really just around authenticity. What's your team's perspective about authenticity in marketing today?
Yeah, I agree with, I think it's a gut feeling. I think when you're reading or looking at something that's not authentic and it's not genuine. I think people have that sense, even in some of the public sentiment you're seeing around AI, is people are starting to be able to recognize when they are fed AI in social media captions, in like videos, and they don't like it. It's not being received well. It's being received as inauthenticity. And I think that's where brands are going to find kind of a sweet spot. The brands that stay true to their brand, that have a real voice, that have a real persona behind them, that are genuine about who we are and what we do and why we do it, rather than scale for the sake of scale or let me just get as much AI out there as I can. Those are the brands that I think are going to actually resonate with people. And I think that's the SEO work that resonates too, where it is grounded in who actually is your audience, who actually cares about you, who do you want to work with, and how do we get you there? And AI is a great tool for that, but I don't think anything really replaces having a genuine voice and thought and expertise behind the work that you're doing. And that to me is the differentiator with a lot of these brands going forward is, do you have a voice and an expert in the room who's actually going to guide this forward?
Michael, I had the thought when you were talking about the restaurant owner, the website you're making, that, man, it would be really nice if they had just said, like, go clean up the beach. We just got hit by a hurricane, which would have been way more authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that just connects to the people and the person and just makes you feel something that's just completely lacking when AI does. And maybe it'll adapt faster than humans could adapt to seeing it. But as of right now, I've unsubscribed to a lot of YouTube or made sure I never seen other things on my social media channel every time I get flooded with AI content. And I'm not the only person. I know that. Well, I really appreciate the two of you joining us for this episode of SEO On Air. I would love to have you guys back. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.